Ladies and gentlemen, picture this. You just found an area that you think could be profitable for land flipping. You go and you contact all of the owners in that area. You get maybe one deal or two under contract, but now your problem is you don't know how to go about the transfer of title process, or in other words, the closing process. And that's exactly what I'm here to teach you about today. I'm here to teach you about the 3 different ways that you can close on a property and make it yours. And those 3 different ways to close on a property are going to be going through a title company, going through a real estate attorney, and 3 sort of a do-it-yourself close scenario. So before we jump into this presentation, if you don't know who I am, my name is Levi. I'm your host for today. I'm co-owner of MMC Land, where Francis and I buy and sell vacant land parcels. We also help new land flippers get their first deal and help other land flippers get more deals with stronger strategies. So without further ado, let's hop into the presentation. All right, guys, welcome to the slideshow. I have for you guys today, 6-figure land investor reveals 3 ways to close on a vacant land deal. So here is the agenda. So number 1 is our introduction on what closing on a property means. We have step 2, how closing with a title company works. Step 3, how closing with a real estate attorney works. Number 4, how a DIY close works or do it yourself. And number 5, what the end of closing generally looks like. So what does the closing stage even mean? If you're brand new, let's quickly explain what closing a land deal actually means. Closing is the process of officially transferring ownership of a property from the seller to the buyer, and it includes making it official in county records. So closing is not just handing over a check. It involves making sure the seller really owns the property, confirming there are no liens or surprises like unpaid taxes or easements on the property, creating a legal deed that transfers the property to you, and recording the deed with the county so the world knows that you now own it. And lastly, making sure money is safely exchanged between the buyer and the seller. Here's why this process is so important. Messing this up can cause unforgivable mistakes. So, the closing process is what protects both parties legally and financially. If you mess it up, you could pay for land the seller does not even own or end up with someone else's tax debt. But in a lot of cases, you already know this. But nonetheless, when we talk about ways to close, we're talking about how you handle that entire process, either by hiring a professional or doing it yourself. And one analogy I really like to give in this situation, it's almost like if there's a pipe leaking in your house, and I used to be a plumber, so that's why that comes to head immediately. But if you have a leaking pipe in your house, you really have 3 options. You can go through a company to fix it, and it's usually the most professional experience you can have. But it's also the most expensive. Or you can go to an independent contractor, someone who is supposed to know what they're doing and has a business for it. They're generally a one-man show, so they can charge a cheaper fee, but sometimes they can be a little bit shady because they don't have as much credibility. And the last way is doing it yourself, and it's generally not a good idea to do any sort of fixing or maintenance by yourself if you're not really sure what you're doing. So, now here is the catch. Not all 3 ways to close are created equal, and it's why they all cost so different. There are many pros to cons to each closing process. One of the biggest differences includes that title companies are generally the only way to issue title insurance. Title insurance ensures that the property has a clean title with no liens. Choosing to go with a real estate attorney or a do-it-yourself close means that you lose out on that entirely, but it does help your profit margin. And this is so important in the game we play because even a couple $100 difference just from closing costs can really mess up your 3 to 5x margin. But let's get into the pros and cons of each to help you determine your best course of action and once you are ready to buy a property. Now, let's start with the most common and beginner-friendly method, closing with a title company. When you go through this route, you're hiring professionals to handle everything. So this includes a title search, escrow, so like handing over the money, making sure it's dispersed properly, legal documents like the deed, and fund disbursement. And here's how the process works. You or the seller submit the signed purchase agreement to the title company. They run a title search to check for liens, back taxes, ownership chain, and any encumbrances. They prepare the closing documents like deed, settlement statement, tax proration, etc. There's a ton of legal documents. I'm not going to get into all of them. And once everything is cleared, both parties sign and the title company disperses funds and they mail the deed to the county clerk for it to be recorded. So here are some pros and cons to a title company. So to start with the benefits, it's the easiest and most hands-off. Title insurance protects you from ownership issues or unpaid liens. It helps with the seller and buyer trust because it is the most professional way to handle a real estate transaction. And they also catch issues like additional errors that are necessary to close, any missing signatures from past transfer of ownership, or unpaid taxes. And there's a million other things that they can notice, but those are just a few to give an example, right? And so the cons, really the biggest con is that they can be kind of expensive. So you're going to expect to pay $800 to $1,500 depending on the state and complexity. Now, if it's really complex, you might even have to pay up to like $4,000. But generally, you know what you're getting into before you get the property under contract, and you kind of prepare for this ahead of time if you know there's going to be title issues. But the timeline can also be slow. It often takes, 2 to 4 weeks. And you're subject to their hours, fees, and timeline. There's nothing you can really do about it since they're a company and they have a very streamlined process generally. Now we have closing with a real estate attorney. How this works is you sign the signed purchase agreement to your attorney. They draft the new deeds necessary to close the transaction with the given info from the purchase agreement. And they may also hold funds in escrow and record the deed for you. It really just depends on the real estate attorney. One issue that Francis and I ran into is for most of our land flipping business career, we had the same real estate attorney that we've used since our second deal ever. And he did all of this for us. He held the funds in escrow. He charged $100 more to do, which is dirt cheap. And he even mailed it to the county for the deed to get recorded for us. Now, one issue is all real estate attorneys kind of have different terms. You really just have to call around and find the best one for you. So that is the most annoying part of closing with the real estate attorney. You need to find one that will work with you in the way that you want to streamline your business. But real estate attorney pros and cons, it can be significantly cheaper than a title company. It really just depends. They all price themselves completely different as well. So just keep that in mind. You might have to call around because some might cost the same as a title company, some may be significantly cheaper. Also, they are generally much faster than a title company. Sometimes you can close in just a few days compared to weeks. They are also more personal. And if you take your time and ask around, you can find someone to partner with to tailor to your specific needs. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier in terms of you need to go and find a real estate attorney that is willing to work with exactly what you need done in your business. And for example, something that's really important to us is escrow, because we like having a middleman to facilitate a transaction. A lot of the times, writing a deed is not very hard to do, and we could do that ourselves very easily and quickly, but really just that escrow part and them being able to handle the funds to create trust between me, the buyer, or even if I'm selling, vice versa, it really helps a lot because no one wants to do business with someone they just met on Facebook Marketplace handling large sums of money over, wire transfer, cashier's check. So having that middleman helps a lot. And in terms of cons, the term real estate attorney is not niche, so it can be hard to find someone that will work with you for a good price. And what I mean by this is if you go on any state bar website for the state that you're doing business in, or if you even type in real estate attorney on Google, real estate attorneys can do a lot of different things. Some only work with commercials, some only work with houses. So it's very, very hard to find a real estate attorney that does transactional real estate that will also be able to do escrow services for you and, be the middleman in the transaction. Or even, this isn't as big of a deal, but, recording it at the county clerk for you is nice. It's just a little bit convenient, but it's hard to find someone that can do that because this is such a broad term that you call people that are real estate attorneys and they do something completely different in real estate that's not really relevant. Like I said, some do not open escrow for you. Some will also not do a quick title and lien search for you, but generally you're going to be doing this yourself before you even send it to a real estate attorney, in my opinion. Generally, I like to use a real estate attorney when I know the title's going to be clean. If I know it's not going to be clean, I just go to a title company, because if I know the property isn't going to have a sort of clean transfer of title, I just go through a title company, because I want to also make sure that there's no liens on the property, and also just to get the title insurance just in case something comes up in the future. But yeah, also with the real estate attorney, you will not get that same title insurance. And some real estate attorneys will outsource title insurance, but at that point, it's generally the same cost as working with the title company, and they get that outsourced title insurance from a title company, so you might as well just go with the title company in the first place. Lastly, you likely have to do your own little do-it-yourself title and lien search, but again, that's not super big of a problem because you kind of do that on every deal anyway, but nonetheless, that's on the cons section. And lastly, we have a do-it-yourself close. It's worth mentioning that you can't even do a do-it-yourself close in every single state. There are a select few states where a real estate attorney / title company is mandatory to do any transfer of title in real estate. So make sure to do some research if that is applicable. Okay? So you and the seller sign a purchase agreement that show all terms. You also prepare a new deed, generally a warranty deed, and the seller will get the deed notarized by any sort of public notary. You can do this at your bank for free to schedule an appointment or do a walk-in. You can pay to do it at UPS. There are a lot of ways to get something notarized, but you or the seller physically record it at the county recorder's office or mail the deed to the county clerk's office. So essentially, you could do this if you live in the area, or you can do it by mail. Whatever best suits you. But if you're the buyer, you will pay the seller directly via check, wire transfer, cashier's check, whatever you guys agree on. Or you guys can use an escrow service to facilitate the transaction. So essentially an escrow service is kind of just like an independent middleman. They're usually super cheap, and I actually recommend that unless you're meeting them in person, just in case the other person just tries to get the best of you and scam you. But essentially after that, you just keep a copy of everything for your personal records. And so here are the pros and cons of a do-it-yourself close. The benefits: it's the cheapest way to close. All you pay is the recording fee. It's also super fast because you're on your own timeline. Like, you can make your own deed in like 20 minutes. And I would not recommend doing that if it's like your first time. I would probably do a couple transactions with like a title company or real estate attorney first before you try to do that yourself. But yeah, you could do that in like 10 minutes, and you can meet with the person if you live in the same state, or get a flight out there. It's really, it's on your own timeline. It's however you and either the seller or the buyer decide to do the transaction. So it's super nice. Like, if you live right next to the guy, you can close probably not same day, but, within a couple days. You can also use an escrow website to facilitate the transaction if necessary, and they're super cheap. They usually charge you by the amount of money that you're spending, but I think, like, for example, like if it's under $10,000, you're paying like maybe like $50 or something cheap like that. And the cons: you still have to do your own title and lien search, just like with the real estate attorney. Sometimes you have to meet in person, which can be like kind of scary or inconvenient if they live super far away. And same thing with the real estate attorney, you will not get title insurance. So when to use each method? Let's review. Title company. You will use title companies a lot. Many properties have title issues, and if that is the case, getting title insurance is never a bad idea if you have the extra margin on your profit to pay the extra costs. I would also say that if you are also spending maybe $5,000 plus on a property, it's probably worth getting title insurance anyways. It's a value add when you go to sell the property, since your buyer knows they are getting a property with no hidden issues to be found down the line. And on top of that, when you're spending $5,000 on a property, your spread is usually going to be good enough that you can afford to take, an extra $1,000 hit on paying closing costs generally. But yeah, that's just how I view it. And in terms of using a real estate attorney, it's never a bad option. It's cheaper than title companies and can also help with title issues. However, you won't really get title insurance for the same cheap price. Nonetheless, I love using a real estate attorney when I am buying, and I am very confident there are no title issues or liens because it's just a cheap price and it's usually a quick close. Also, I almost always use a real estate attorney when I'm selling a property, since obviously I know I didn't create any title issues or liens on the property while I had it, so I can confidently sell it to someone. and giving them a general warranty deed, knowing that no issues are going to come up in the future, because it also provides a cheaper option to our buyers who generally pay for all the closing costs themselves. And this do-it-yourself method. This method will likely be your least common path to close. However, it still does have a place in your business if you're doing business in one of those states where this is legal. This can be very effective if you live in the same state or area as a seller and meet them in person to do the exchange. Writing your own deed is also easy and quick and can be done in like 20 minutes. You're essentially just copy and pasting a deed that you have previously and just inputting your own information. But again, not legal advice. I'd probably, recommend you guys check it with the real estate attorney unless you guys really know what you're doing. But it's also very cheap, so it's well worth it when the right opportunity arises. You can also use an escrow website, but to be honest, they all look kind of sketchy, and it might spook your buyer out. They look super outdated, most of them. But one last thing I want to add about a do-it-yourself close is, all you're pretty much paying here, unless you have to travel to them, via like a plane ticket, rental car. But if you don't have to do any of that and you can do like an escrow website or something like that, you're pretty much only paying the recording fee. So it's super cheap. You're pretty much just getting the property for what you paid for it, what you guys agreed on the purchase agreement. So that is awesome if this opportunity ever arises in your business. Now, just real fast, what happens on closing day? So after the title and lien search has been done, the docs have been prepped, and both parties agreed to a closing date, you will be ready for closing day, so congrats. Closing day is when the money moves, the documents all get signed, and the documents get shipped off to the county to get recorded at the county level and become public to the world. So now, depending on how you close, title company, attorney, or do-it-yourself closings, who handled these steps and how formal it is will change. So like, for example, title companies, they always record the deeds. They always mail it off to the county clerk for you. An attorney might or might not. Make sure you ask them before you do business. And if they don't, and that's a problem for you, don't use them. But it's generally not really a deal breaker. It's not that hard to do yourself. Obviously, if you're doing it yourself, you have to do all of this yourself. Right? So, that's really the only difference. Like I said, who handles the steps and how formal it is will change depending on how you close. And hopefully you all now understand what options to choose when starting the closing process on your next property. If you guys like the video, comment something you learned or any feedback or anything you want to learn in the future, and subscribe. Make sure you follow us. The socials are at the bottom of the screen per usual. If you guys have any questions on the video or anything related to our business or what we do, feel free to text us on Instagram or TikTok. We respond to every message. So just let us know. I hope you guys have a nice rest of your day. I've been your host, Levi, and peace out.